Instead of ruining our marriage in front of everyone we knew, I felt 20 pairs of eyes turned toward me, waiting for the explosion and the tears, the scene that would give them something to talk about for months. "I'm leaving you for your sister. My husband of 17 years, Jason," said, the words hanging in the air like shrapnel suspended in that millisecond before pain registers. The restaurant had a champagne flute raised at the head of our anniversary dinner table. "I'm Lydia Harmon, and..." At 42, I'd established a reputation as one of Boulder's most respected interior designers. I specialized in turning cold, sterile spaces into cozy havens, so it wasn't lost on me that I couldn't see the emptiness growing in my own home until now. "My name is Lydia Harmon, and I appreciate your candor." Jason's smug expression faltered. As he looked down at the folder and asked, "What's this?" His voice lost its performative confidence, but I remained steady and reached for my handbag, pulled out a thick manila folder, and placed it purposefully on the white tablecloth in front of him. "Open it," I replied, getting up from my seat and smoothing. "Please enjoy the remainder of your dinner. The bill has been settled," I said, turning to Jason one final time before turning to face our stunned friends and family seated around the table, including my sister Vanessa, whose eyes were unable to meet mine and whose face was devoid of color. I was wearing a midnight blue dress that I had bought especially for this evening. I heard the rustle of papers followed by a strangled sound from Jason. I didn't turn around, and the cool night air hit my face as I finally stepped outside and let myself take a full breath. The click of my heels against the marble floor echoed. As I walked away, straightening my spine and looking straight ahead. In order. I saw myself in the rearview mirror as I slid into the driver's seat. I looked remarkably composed for someone whose life had just fallen apart, but I had 3 months to prepare for this moment ever since I discovered Vanessa's first message on Jason's phone. What neither of them knew was that Vanessa wasn't the only person who had betrayed him, and I had proof of all the affairs, money he had siphoned from our accounts, property he had attempted to transfer solely to his name, and most the game had just begun, and like many others, our story started with a chance encounter that seemed to be fate. Jason and I met at a home exhibition where I was showcasing my designs, and he was charming, attentive, and seemed genuinely interested in my work. Damning all the plans they'd devised to force me out of my own company, I allowed myself one small smile as I pulled away from the curb. Vanessa, who was 7 years my junior but always my closest confidant, stood next to me as my maid of honor. She whispered, "You found the perfect one," as she helped adjust my veil, and I'd believed her. The first decade was everything I'd hoped for. 2 years later, we were married in a small ceremony at a mountainside venue overlooking Boulder. Talent and his business sense, we bought a lovely house in the hills, hosted dinners for friends, and established what I believed to be an unbreakable foundation. However, over time, the cracks started to show. Jason started working, then moved more frequently, and eventually became distant in ways I couldn't quite explain. I put my worries aside, claiming that the changes were a normal part of a long-term relationship. When Vanessa returned to Boulder following her divorce 3 years ago, she became a regular fixture during Jason's frequent absences. I was thankful for her company because he was only focused on expanding the business. She would reassure me that when I confided in her about my worries, men get caught up in their work, you know how they are. I threw myself into my designs, creating spaces for others while my own home grew colder. It wasn't until I overheard a whispered phone conversation that the first real suspicion took root. "She doesn't suspect anything," Jason had said in a low voice, "just stick to the scheme." When I confronted him, he dismissed it as a surprise and said he was planning for our anniversary. I wanted to believe him because the alternative was too painful to contemplate. Next came the mysterious charges on our business credit card for weekend trips while he was purportedly attending conferences, and most tellingly, the growing intimacy between him and Vanessa's persistent embraces, inside jokes, and the way they had stopped talking when I walked into a room, but I still waited for hard evidence, which came in the form of a misdirected text message 3 months ago that said, "Miss you already, can't wait until she's out of the picture." The message was intended for Jason, but it ended up on our shared iPad rather than his phone. That night, after Jason had gone to sleep, I slipped out of bed and made AI called Patricia Donovan, the most brutal divorce lawyer in Colorado, and the following morning I hired a private investigator to collect all of the information Patricia had given me, including bank statements, property deeds, text messages, photographs, and more. I then started constructing my case piece by piece, with each new discovery being more devastating than the last. The private investigator, Theo Bear, provided weekly reports with clinical detachment, unaware of what was happening. Theo said, sliding the photos across his desk, the first revelation was expected but painful because it showed Jason and Vanessa entering a hotel together and emerging hours later looking unkempt and proud of themselves. Text message records revealed they'd been carrying on for almost a year, their betrayal carefully planned around my business trips and client meetings, standard affair protocol. But the second wave hit harder. When I showed Patricia the financial records, she explained that Jason was preparing to leave you financially compromised. This is premeditated. We can use that, she said of the nearly $300,000 he had diverted from our joint accounts to a separate one in his name. At first, the amounts were small, but as he became bolder, they increased. But what really crushed any remaining feelings I had for the man I had married was the third discovery, evidence of a woman named Olivia Winters, a client whose house we had renovated the previous year, with whom Jason had been involved for at least 6 months. The pictures of them together were clearly intimate. 2 weeks prior to our anniversary, legal documents obtained through Theo's connections revealed Jason had tried to transfer ownership of our mountain property, a vacation home we'd bought with my inheritance money, solely to his name. The transfer had been flagged, and Theo apologized to Miss Harmon, saying, "Your husband's been busy." His expression softened for the first time since I'd hired him. The county clerk put a temporary stop to it because of missing signatures. "He's planning to clean you out," Patricia said bluntly at our most recent meeting, but we caught him in time. Together, we came up with a plan, and I discreetly separated our business accounts, altered the property deeds, and prepared legal documents for the dissolution of our partnership, both marital and professional. Patricia recommended that I wait until Jason had made his move, whatever it was, and let him show his hand first. She said that this would strengthen our position. Looking back, I should have expected his flair for dramatic timing because Jason always had a performer's instinct, but he didn't. I never thought he would choose our anniversary dinner for his big announcement, surrounded by friends and family who had been a part of our lives for years. The folder I left for him to find, in front of the very people whose approval he sought, contained all of my preparation, betrayal, lies, and schemes. As I drove home from the restaurant, my phone started ringing with messages and calls, but I chose to ignore them all, concentrating instead on the road ahead, the house that would remain mine, and the business I had established and was now running alone. Tomorrow would bring chaos tonight. For a moment, I let myself breathe, the illusion of peace broken when my phone rang and Jason's name flashed on the screen. I slept surprisingly well that night, as if letting go of my secrets had lifted a physical weight. The morning sun streamed through the bedroom windows, which I had positioned to catch the dawn light. Taking control of the narrative was my only advantage at this point, so I prepared coffee and hushed the first of what had now grown to 27 missed calls since I'd left the restaurant. I planned to keep it going at exactly 9 a.m. When Patricia answered the phone, I said, "It's done," and she replied, "He made his announcement." As if on cue, the doorbell rang through the security camera, and I saw Jason standing on our porch looking unkempt. "Perfect," she said, "I've already filed the divorce petition, and he should be served within the hour." He was wearing the same clothes from last night and was frantic, with his normally perfectly coiffed hair sticking up at odd angles. I asked Patricia if I should let him in, and she said that everything could be used as a court record. I opened the door but blocked the entrance, and Jason looked worse up close, with bloodshot eyes and a pale face. He started speaking, saying, "We need talking about, this isn't what it seems like." I asked him calmly about the affair with my sister. The one with Olivia Winters, or the money you've been stealing from our accounts, and he winced at Olivia's name. How did you? Does it matter, Jason? I know everything, there's nothing left to talk about. He pushed past me into the foyer, and, as I was saying this, he was so desperate that he couldn't listen to me. Olivia didn't mean a thing. You and I spent 17 years building a life together, and you can't throw that away. I didn't. I responded calmly. You did that last night in front of everyone, and we know that I was upset. You've been aloof and preoccupied with your work. Don't you dare blame me for your decisions. Jason paced our entryway with his hands in his hair, looking trapped. The doorbell rang again, this time with a professional-looking woman holding legal documents. Jason Harmon? She said, looking beyond me. That's him. I acknowledge that you've been served, and she handed him the envelope before quickly leaving. Jason looked over the documents, and then I noticed that he was staring at me. You planned this, you knew before last night. 3 months ago, I admitted, not as long as you've been plotting with Vanessa, but I work well, and his face is darkened. Vanessa doesn't know about Olivia, the money, or anything else. I told her that she must feel very special and that she loves me, and he responded defensively. Does Olivia love you too? Does she realize that she's the other woman? Jason's phone rang with a text. What have you done? He whispered after taking a quick look at it, and the last of the color disappeared from his face. I haven't done anything yet, I said, but it's possible that Theo Weber, my meticulous private investigator, sent some pictures to Vanessa by mistake this morning. Technology can be so unpredictable. The next act of our drama was about to start when I heard screeching tires outside. Vanessa burst through the front door without knocking, her face twisted with heartbreak and rage. She was obviously dressed in a hurry, complete with mismatched shoes and an inside-out sweater, and her hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail. She held her phone in her hand like a weapon, saying, "You bastard." She spat at Jason, ignoring me entirely. Who the hell is Olivia? Jason's eyes darted between us, figuring out his best move. I watched the performance from a distance, leaning against the stair railing. This confrontation was inevitable, but I wasn't prepared for it to happen so quickly. Theo must have sent the pictures right away after our, Vanessa, please calm down. Jason replied, extending his hands in a conciliatory motion. I can explain. Explain, she yelled, throwing her phone in his face. Tell me why you're in bed with this woman while telling me you love me and promising me we'll be together. It's not what it looks like, he insisted after you left. Lydia. The irony of repeating the same line he'd used on me moments earlier seemed to have escaped his notice. Vanessa finally turned to face me, her expression shifting between confusion, defiance, and shame. You could tell she asked, her voice was smaller now. Regarding you and Jason, as well as Olivia, I maintained a neutral, clinical tone throughout. Even when discussing the money he has been embezzling from our company, the property he attempted to seize, and the schemes you two devised to force me out of my own business. Vanessa blanched, but we didn't. She turned back to Jason and asked what she was talking about. Jason gave me a scathing look, telling me not to care. Turn us against one another. I went to the sideboard in our dining room and came back with copies of the documents I had gathered, bank transfers, property records, and text message transcripts, not the altered versions he showed you. Vanessa accepted the papers with shaking hands, and as she read them, her breathing became labored. After she leaves, we can expand Harmon Interiors across the country. She read aloud from a transcript of your design aesthetic. Together with my business plan, we'll make millions. Lydia is too provincial and too devoted to Boulder. She looked up, her eyes welling with tears. You said that was about a possible investor, not about me taking Lydia's place. Jason stepped toward her. Baby, but you don't understand, don't baby me. Vanessa snapped, flinching from his touch, and the money you claimed you were saving for us to start over was all I was asking for. Anything for our future, even Olivia. I interrupted discreetly as Vanessa went through the pictures, each one dealing a new blow. 3 weeks ago, she whispered, looking at a timestamp, you said you were in Denver meeting suppliers. She doesn't mean anything, Jason begged. It was just physical. Vanessa's voice was empty as she asked, like I was just physical. In the beginning? Before you convinced me we were in love, the truth seemed to hit her all at once, and she staggered back, dropping the documents onto the floor for the first time since she had entered. She gave me a serious look. Lydia, she said, referring to her older sister, the person she had deceived, but I shook my head and said, don't, not now. A strange silence descended upon the three of us as our daily lives continued, with birds singing, neighbors walking, dogs, and delivery trucks rumbling. This doesn't change anything, he said, addressing us both. The divorce is still happening, the business will need to be divided, and we can figure out the rest later. At that moment, I grinned genuinely. Before this, our little triangle of betrayal seemed suspended in amber. Expression that seemed to frighten him more than anger would have about that. I said, there won't be much for you to divide. What are you talking about? Jason demanded that the self-assured businessman persona return to place. Harmon Interiors is worth millions of dollars, and the contracts alone are in my name. I finished for him last week, and all of his clients have been moved to Lydia Harmon Designs. It's incredible how understanding people can be when Jason found out that their designer's husband had been embezzling money, his face twisted in anger. You can't do that, he said, because we built that company together. In fact, I can, Patricia, he said, getting our partnership agreement reviewed by 3 different lawyers. The morality clause you insisted on including when we signed with the Westbrook Group last year works both ways. No judge will uphold these 2 already, I responded, adding that the temporary injunctions were granted yesterday and that you will no longer have access to the design studio, client files, or business accounts. Jason's phone started buzzing. And he looked at it before responding sharply, his face changing from anger to disbelief as he listened. That's impossible. Check again, and then he ended the call without saying anything more. Farewell, problem? I naively inquired, what did you do to the Aspen project? He insisted, the client recently withdrew from a $2 million deal. I didn't take any action, indicating that the Thornton family doesn't like finding out that their designer's husband is having an affair with Mrs. Thornton's sister. It's a strange coincidence, isn't it? Olivia ought to have brought up her family ties. Vanessa had been observing our conversation like a tennis match, her eyes darting back and forth between us. She then started packing her belongings, obviously trying to get away. Where do Jason asked her, and she said, this is between you two now, without looking at him. Don't be naive, he snapped. You're not innocent in this, you're as involved as I am in your text messages and plans for the company. I never intended to cause Lydia financial harm, you claimed that we would give her a fair buyout, and you believed him. I asked him out of genuine curiosity after witnessing him deceive his 17-year-old wife, but she had no response. For the record, I went on, telling Patricia not to mention you in the divorce proceedings because your relationship with Jason is your business. Vanessa then turned to face me. Surprise. Why would you do that? A public scandal would harm our parents, who have done nothing wrong, and I added that I think you'll suffer a lot without my assistance. Jason scoffed, always the martyr, but I corrected him, always the pragmatist. The story is already out there, and you made sure of it with your public statement. I don't want to feed the rumor mill, I just want what's for me. And for both of you to vanish from my life. Jason's phone buzzed again with another call, which he ignored. This isn't over, he threatened. I'll fight you on all fronts. You're welcome to try, I said, but before you do, you might want to speak with the Department of Financial Services. They're very interested in those unauthorized transfers from our business accounts. The color left his face. You reported me, but I said your assistant Gretchen did. Apparently she has ethical standards. Vanessa murmured to no one in particular. I never thought it would end like this, as she paused at the doorknob. It hasn't ended yet, I added, but it will soon enough. As they both departed individually and in different directions, I experienced an odd feeling. The confrontation I had been looking forward to for months had finally come to pass, but victory tasted different than I had anticipated. The weeks that followed the confrontation were filled with legal meetings, client assurances, and quiet evenings spent alone in the house, which felt more empty and more mine than ever before. Jason had moved into a downtown apartment, reportedly alone, and Vanessa had returned to Phoenix. The divorce process proceeded quickly thanks to the wealth of information I had gathered and Jason's sudden unwillingness to fight. Our mother told me over the phone in tears that she wouldn't tell me what had happened, only that she had made a terrible mistake, that some mistakes can't be undone. Once the financial investigation started, the Department of Financial Services had frozen several of his accounts pending their conclusions, leaving him with little money to launch a legal challenge. On a clear autumn morning, I met Patricia in her office to discuss the last settlement offer he was considering. She said, sliding the document across her desk, "Full withdrawal of claims against the business, the house, the mountain property. Everything," and I quickly read the agreement in exchange for dropping the financial misbehavior charges and a non-disclosure agreement regarding the affairs. Patricia closely observed me. "It's more than we anticipated." He's shielding Olivia, and I understood that the Thornton family has a big say in the design industry. If this were made public, her reputation would suffer. Patricia nodded. "But it works out well for you. You get a clean break in all your assets." I signed the documents without "But what about Vanessa? Her legal team has not contacted me, so I don't think she's pursuing anything." As I was leaving Patricia's office, my phone rang, and I received an email notification from private investigator Theo Weber with the subject line, "Closure." The attached photo pictured Jason leaving a hotel with yet another woman. Neither Vanessa nor Olivia's old habits seemed to have died hard. I deleted the email without opening the attachment because some of the information was only meant to hurt me, and I was done with pain. 6 months after I signed the divorce papers, I was standing in the newly remodeled Lydia Harmon design studio in downtown Boulder, which had previously been littered with dark furniture and Jason's enormous desk. My business had changed in his absence, and the Westbrook Group had not only kept their contract but had expanded it, hiring me to design their new corporate headquarters in Denver, the Thornons. After the initial shock had returned, clients purposefully excluded Olivia from family gatherings where I might be present, and the space now reflected my aesthetic with its clean lines, natural materials, and abundant light, just like my home. I paused before answering Lydia when my phone rang and I saw Vanessa's name on the screen in my foyer for the first time since that day. She started off by saying, "I don't expect forgiveness, I just needed to tell you how sorry I am." I was sitting at my drafting table, gazing out at the mountains that had seen so much of my life story, and she explained why I'm in therapy now and why I betrayed you. Believing him, we remained silent for 17 years despite one horrible betrayal. "He had affairs before me, didn't he?" she finally said, and after "Yes," I acknowledged, "I suspect there were many we never knew." Found another pause. "Mom wants us all to be together for Christmas, and I told her that I wouldn't come unless you gave your permission." I thought that forgiveness wasn't something I could force, but harboring resentment only served to keep me bound to the past. "I can't promise warmth, but I won't object to your presence." The divorce was finalized on Thursday, and by Friday, I had changed the company name, repainted the office, and scheduled a solo trip to Barcelona, a city Jason had always refused to visit because he couldn't. After we hung up, she whispered, "More than I deserve." I went back to my sketches for the Westbrook project, which featured glass walls and strategically placed skylights to let the most natural light into what had previously been dark, cramped spaces. Some metaphors speak for themselves. Speak Spanish. I felt lighter with every step I took away from our shared history. I was almost shattered by my sister's and husband's betrayal, but during the process of rebuilding, I found aspects of myself that had been dormant during my marriage. The bits that had been broken had healed. I had reconciled with both betrayers, not for their benefit, and I felt stronger than before. However, my kind of retaliation was rising from the ashes rather than causing damage. Instead of expecting me to crumble, they had constructed something full and unfinished. The final triumph for me was not to destroy them but to rebuild an empire. At last, I'm really learning about myself.